Yo, thank you so much for checking out this video. My name is Ruslan. This channel exists to encourage, empower, inspire people to live out the king's dream for their life. On this video, we're actually going to be looking at an excerpt with an interview I did with Pastor Jeff Morris from North Coast and the Jordan, one of the most thriving young adults ministry in the country. He grew up from 40 to 700 young adults every Thursday night. It's an amazing ministry here in Vista, Oceanside, California. And we talk about a topic that's very, very taboo, specifically mental illness, anxiety, depression, suicide, and how a lot of pastors deal with this. Recently in Southern California, a pastor named Andrew Stoken took his own life at his church in Chino Hills, California. Super tragic story, left behind a wife, 3 children, and it just kind of caused a ripple effect in the church community and the pastor community. I wanted to create dialogue on this very tough, tricky subject that we don't talk about enough and we don't really know how to navigate. And Pastor Jeff is going to give you some insight on the pressures that pastors feel. And one of the more shocking, alarming, unexpected signs that someone may be considering taking their own life. That comes in at about the 11-minute mark. So thank you for checking out this video. September is National Suicide Prevention Month. So if you are dealing with thoughts of suicide, call 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-TALK. You are not meant to deal with the pain alone. There are people and there are resources available to help you. So you've seen, I would say, as a pastor on staff at a church, you've seen success. Sure. You've seen multiple ministries blow up. Your personal platform, brand, whatever you call it, is taking off. You're speaking more. You're getting flown out. Recently, and there's been a couple things that I've seen, and we can get specifically into. But the 2 things recently, a well-known pastor, and this happens like all the time, but a well-known pastor in kind of the Christian hip hop community came out. This dude has a church out in the Northwest, came out and said, man, he's been having an adulterous affair for like a long time, and so he gets sat down, and this is someone that was influential, had a lot of influence in some of the Christian hip hop artists out in that area, and I've seen that repeatedly, right? So you see adultery, you see sexual immorality, you see guys living completely double lives, and then you see the flip side of that, I guess, is now we're seeing a huge epidemic of the mental health side, and in Southern California, and it kind of hit us hard. I know my mind was on it, and I don't know, it was just like, man, this is brutal. Pastor Andrew, out of Chino, I thought of the Ball family because they're from Chino. Recently committed suicide. Pastor's 30 years old, thriving, successful church. And it's not, I'm sure this happens on all degrees, but when you see quote unquote successful people with numbers, with influence, completely just morally drop the ball, that you're like, I would never think that person would go and cheat on their spouse. I would never think that person would deal with mental illness and then commit suicide. Give us some context on why is it so hard to be a pastor, and then maybe tie that in just to the epidemic of mental health we're experiencing in the country as a whole. Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of pressure on pastors, especially the more successful your church is, the more you're in the spotlight. Ministry is the only job where you can get fired because of your morality. Well, maybe not the only job, but it's one of the jobs. Your morality is directly attached to your directly attached income. To it, and which is kind of scary if you think about it. It is, man. The decisions that you make can dictate whether you get a paycheck or not. Like on the daily. And then, so you throw that into it, so there's a lot of pressure there, and then you throw in the pressure of everything is rising and falling on your shoulders, meaning the decisions that you make for the church, if it goes well, people pat you on the back. If it doesn't go well, it's all your fault. You know what I mean? When you think about like week in and week out, you're performing for the same audience. That got to be brutal. You got to have a new sermon. So like when you go do a show, you're doing the same songs. Boom, you know when to hit it, when to jump, when to what to do, and every crowd is like, and if you have a bad crowd or you have a bad show, well, you don't see them next week. Well, when it's your, like, you got to like top yourself every single week, it feels like. And so there's a lot of pressure there to produce content that's going to wow the masses week in and week out. That on top of that, plus the pressure a lot of times that church boards are putting on their pastors to do certain things. And so all of that, and then people are looking at you
as, I mean, and a lot of pastors try to become as normal as they can to their congregations by admitting as many failures and whatnot as they can, but still people are looking at you as their guide, as their mentor, as their pastor. Yeah. That's heavy, and that weighs on you. And if you have any kind of anxiety or any kind of depression, then to admit that shows a weakness. And once people, man, and people are brutal, especially Christian people, man, they're brutal, and they'll pounce on that weakness, and they'll come after you, and they'll, again, like you have a bad sermon, they're coming after you. Mix all of that stuff together, and then the fact knowing that if I want to step out of ministry, there's not a whole lot I can do. Not only that, if I step out of ministry, I'm seen as a failure for stepping out of ministry. You know, like, you just couldn't cut it, huh? You couldn't pastor that church, huh? You couldn't do it. So you step, and not only that, like, what are you gonna do? Like, hey, I'd love to manage Target. I've managed a church before. I don't even know, like.
Where do you go from there?
Where do you go from there?
One of the things that I've heard it said, and I've been on staff at the church. My last job before I went full time with the music was I was on staff at the Movement. I was preaching a couple times a year from the main platform. And one of the things that I felt, and I've heard just about every pastor I've talked to about this say, is there's a huge, I guess, stigma that, like, you're not allowed to not be okay. Talk about that a little bit. Like, because not only, like you said, you're everybody's mentor, but then if you are going through something, you then cannot be that vulnerable and be like, man, like, I'm having a rough month in my marriage. I'm having a rough, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a rough stint, a rough season. You're not allowed to not be okay to that congregation. What does that feel like? And how can people, can people support you in that?
Man, I think that for a long time, pastors really painted themselves into that corner. Because when all you do is share from your successes, then your failures are blaringly obvious then when you share from those. One of the things that I've really tried to do is I share from as much of my weaknesses as I can. And I think a lot of with this, like millennials and Gen Z and all this stuff coming up, like they like that a little bit more. You know, I think the reality of that hits a lot better. But there still is that pressure to not be okay because, again, people are trusting their lives in your church a lot of times, when ultimately they should be trusting in Jesus. But they put so much into that church. And if you're seen as not okay, well then, I don't know if I should tithe anymore because Pastor Ruslan is, he's been, him and his wife have been having issues. Is that going to go wrong for the church? I mean, I don't know if maybe we shouldn't go here anymore, and so. And
I saw all this, and I wasn't actually ordained as a pastor. Even though I was doing a lot of this stuff. I saw this, I felt all this. Dude, and when there was a crossroads and you were kind of there along with me, and I was like, I'm not going that pastoral route. Like, I'm good, because not only is that pressure, the mental side of things, it's just a lot to deal with.
Everyone looks at you, they look at your wife, and they look at your kids. Like, they look at your. I was just at a conference in Hawaii. Speaking suffering for Jesus, it's hard, but somebody
in Hawaii.
Somebody had to do it. And I was talking with some of the pastors there, and they talked about how you can tell the health of the pastor by looking at their kids. Like how their kids are behaving, what their kids are doing. And I agree with that to a point. But sometimes kids are just wild. You know what I mean?
Sometimes kids are just kids.
Sometimes kids are just kids. But then that's that pressure, though, that pastor feels, is knowing, like, man, people are looking at my kids. If my daughter gets out of line, well, then, man, what is that? Am I fit to be a pastor? Again, then it goes into now your whole career is up in arms because who knows if he's really fit.
Do you think there's a degree of really successful pastors feeling more pressure and people that are just starting out that have to be bivocational, or do you think it's kind of across the board? Because it seems like if you're struggling just to put food on the table and you're bivocational, that's probably pretty brutal. But the flip side is the more successful you become, the more insulated you are, and the more isolated you are, and the more out of relationship you are. So do you think it's kind of like, or is it just across the board? This is just pastors just deal with this on every level?
Well, I think pastors can deal with this on every level, but I think it's definitely different how each pastor deals with it. Like, for me, I'm incredibly relational. Like, I've got friends in a lot of places, so I want to try to connect with as many people as I can. And I know a lot of these guys that are like, the celebrity pastors right now, they have a good network of people that they're connected to, but if you're going to be open with your issues, you'll be open at this level, or you'll be open at this level, you know?
Yeah.
For those of you guys that aren't watching, like, you know, like low level or high level, you'll be open because that's just who you are. Yeah. And so the weight that you feel at each level also depends on who you are and how you deal with things, how you cope. Yeah. Like if you do struggle with depression and anxiety, you're going to feel it at whatever level you're at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the things that, to come full circle and talk about Pastor Andrew out of Chino Hills, who committed suicide, I watched his message, not the one right before, but the one before that. Yeah. And he had been back from a sabbatical. His elder board sat him down and they were like, you know, hey, like, you got to chill. You had this gnarly panic attack. So they sat him down. I think he had 4 months, I think 4 or 5 months or something on sabbatical. He comes back. He preaches this message about anxiety and depression. I probably deal with anxiety and depression on the level of like every other person. You know, like I just kind of feel blue occasionally. Right now I'm on Whole 30. I don't have sugar. I feel very, very blue.
That Whole 30 will wreck you.
Whole 30, man, no sugar. But he taught this message. I don't know if you saw it, but he taught the message, and I watched it. And the thing that is always intriguing to me about mental health is most people, and it's just my experience that I know dealing with mental health issues, aren't taking care of themselves in other areas. Right. So then it amplifies and flares up the mental health thing. But hearing him talk about it, he said, hey, a lot of doctors, if they're good doctors, they're gonna tell you to work on the basics. Sleep, you know, getting outside and getting some sun, working out, eating better. And he's like hitting this whole thing on it, killing it in this like mental health. Here's some resources, da 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 da. And then like 2 weeks later, he kills himself. You know, and I'm just kind of like, wow. Like, if anybody had the answers, it seemed to be this guy. You know, like, how does something like that, someone that has the information, someone that is doing the quote unquote right things, someone that maybe is taking their medication or is whatever, like, how is this still such an like big thing that people are dealing with?
Right, yeah, exactly. Well, I don't pretend to know his.
Yeah, and neither of us are mental health experts, so we just gotta say that.
Yeah, at all. Having dealt with anxiety and different different mental issues myself over the years, and then again pastoring now for 18 plus years, I think one of the signs when somebody does have mental disorder, and again I'm not speaking to Pastor Andrew's case at all. But what happens a lot of times before people do commit suicide when they have a mental issue is there is a major turnaround and they're happier and like they're on, because they've already kind of resolved in their mind that this is going to end.
Whoa.
And so
that's dark.
Yeah, it's heavy. And so I mean, I don't know again if that's in that case, but there is also that thing too of again, when you're a pastor and you get on that platform, if you just speak about with authority about anything, people are going to believe you. And people are going to follow you in that, I guess what he covered in that message, there are the basics, take sleep, all that different stuff. But I know as someone with anxiety, it's hard to sleep sometimes. So it's not just like there's something chemically, physically wrong in my body that doesn't let me sleep, that won't let my mind shut off, that I exercise, I'm fit, I do hot yoga. Shout out to hot yoga. I do hot surf, and all those things. But there comes a point for people out there where, especially within the church, where we have to be okay with promoting medication for mental illness.
So once again, thank you for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you give it a thumbs up, like, share it with somebody that needs it. And again, if you're dealing with thoughts of suicide, call 1-800-273-TALK. 1-800-273-TALK. You are not meant to go through the pain alone, and there are people available to help you deal with whatever it is that you're going through. So thank you so much. Peace.